I slept with her 3 times before I found out she was my girlfriend's mother. The first time, I did not even know her name. It started on a Friday night at a small roadside bar just outside downtown Portland. I came alone, right after a blazing fight with Emma, my girlfriend of nearly 2 years. I do not even remember what we were fighting about. Probably something about me not being ambitious enough. Again, I just wanted a dark corner, a few shots of bourbon, and a way to drown the feeling of being misunderstood. I did not expect to meet anyone important that night. Definitely not someone who would unravel my entire life. And then she walked in. Black dress, tight fit, shoulder-length dark brown hair, eyes that belonged to a woman who had lost something or someone but still carried danger like perfume. She did not look at anyone else, only me. I cannot explain why, but I knew she came for me. My name is Nathan Carter. I am 27 years old. I work as a designer for a mid-sized creative agency in downtown Portland. Pretty average life, nothing special. Emma, on the other hand, is brilliant and driven. She was top of her class in law school and constantly pushes me to grow up, do more, be someone. That night, I walked out of our apartment with fury burning in my chest. Portland in winter always smells like damp leaves and cheap whiskey. I ended up at the Oak Room, an old school bar with dim lighting and jazz humming in the background. It was the perfect place to fall apart in peace. That is where I saw her. She sat on the bar stool next to mine, said nothing, and ordered a drink with a subtle nod. I glanced at her. Lightly tanned skin, tight lips, an old French watch on her wrist. Mid-40s maybe. I did not speak first, but she did. You look like someone who needs either a strong drink or someone to talk to. I gave a half smirk. Both. She smiled. Not flirty, not fake. A kind of smile that said she had nothing left to lose. We talked for about an hour. I do not remember the words, only the feeling, like I was slipping into another world. One without Emma, without pressure, without future, only raw, dangerous now. She never gave me her name. I never asked. Part of me did not want to know, because knowing meant remembering, and remembering meant I would be responsible. When she got up, I knew what was coming. I followed her out of the bar like it was inevitable. We ended up at a cheap motel down the street. That night, I slept with a stranger. The next morning she was gone. No number, no text, no goodbye. Just her scent on the pillow and a faint lipstick mark on my shirt collar. I figured it was over, but I was wrong. A week later, I saw her again. She was sitting at the dinner table in Emma's house when I was invited over to meet her family for the first time. Emma came out from the kitchen, smiling. "Nathan, I want you to meet my mum. This is Monica." I nearly dropped my wine glass. Her, Monica, Emma's mother. She looked at me, calm and measured, and smiled like she had never seen me before. No surprise, no fear, no sign. But I knew. She knew. We both knew. We had crossed the line, and neither of us was about to stop. "You don't have to go with him," he said. "I do," she replied. "If I don't, my father will make my life hell. He'll punish me in ways you wouldn't understand." Caleb looked at her, eyes dark. "What if I came to the gala?" She laughed bitterly. "As what? My secret boyfriend who works on cars?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked out over the city. "You deserve better than this." "I thought I had better," she said softly. "But you're hiding things from me too." He turned to her sharply. "Madison, I never meant to lie to you. I just didn't want you to see me differently." "Then tell me," she whispered. "Who are you really?" He hesitated, and then finally spoke. "My real name is Caleb Harrison. My family owns Harrison Technologies. We're one of your father's largest silent partners." She stared at him in stunned silence. The air between them shifted. "You knew who I was this whole time?" she asked, her voice trembling. He nodded. "At first it was business. My father wanted me to understand the Montgomery Empire from the inside. But then I met you, and everything changed." She stepped away from the truck, arms crossed tightly around herself. "So this has all been a game? You pretending to be someone else just to spy on my family?" "No," he said, stepping closer. "It stopped being a game the second I saw you crying in the campus garden. When I saw how your father controlled your every move. when I realized how lonely you really were. She didn't know what to believe. Her heart felt like it had been cracked open. You lied to me, Caleb, just like everyone else in my life. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you the truth soon enough. She turned away, tears burning her eyes. I need time. I can't do this right now. He nodded, knowing better than to chase her. Take all the time you need, but I'll be there. I'm not giving up on us. Later that week, as the summer gala approached, Madison felt trapped. Her father paraded her around like a trophy, planning her dress, her schedule, even the jewelry she would wear. Everything was for appearances, for alliances, for power. But deep down, a storm was building inside her, one that would not stay silent for much longer. The night of the gala arrived like thunder rolling across a black sky. The Montgomery estate was transformed into a palace of wealth and power. Its massive glass walls shimmered under the glow of chandeliers and camera flashes. Men in tailored tuxedos and women in diamond-studded gowns paraded through the marble halls, sipping champagne and exchanging secrets behind tight smiles. Madison descended the grand staircase slowly. Her silver gown flowed like liquid metal. She looked stunning, but her face was a portrait of restraint. Her father stood at the bottom of the steps with Mr. Sinclair beside him, offering his arm. Caleb watched from the shadows of the courtyard. He had no intention of being seen, not tonight. He just needed to know she was all right. But what he saw instead felt like a knife to the chest. Madison smiled, touched Mr. Sinclair's arm, and posed for the photographers. She looked like she belonged, like she had chosen this world over him. He turned away before she could see him. Inside the ballroom, Madison was suffocating. Every word spoken to her felt scripted. Every compliment tasted like poison. She tried to pretend she was somewhere else, someone else. But then, as she passed a mirror near the open veranda, she saw her reflection. The gown, the jewels, the mask she had learned to wear since she was a child. She barely recognized herself. A few minutes later, she slipped out onto the balcony and leaned over the railing, breathing in the night air. Behind her, a voice stirred the stillness. I almost did not recognize you, she turned slowly. It was Caleb. Her heart slammed against her ribs. What are you doing here? I had to see you, he said quietly. I had to know if everything between us was really over. Madison looked back through the glass doors where her father stood, sipping whiskey and laughing with investors. Then she looked at Caleb, standing there in a simple black suit. No pretense, no mask. I do not know what is real anymore, she said. This is, he said, stepping closer. Whatever else I have done, whatever lies I started with, the way I feel about you is real. She closed her eyes. You lied to me, I know, he said, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. But I am still here. I will wait as long as it takes for you to believe me. Just then, a soft rustling behind them interrupted the moment. They both turned. It was her mother. Madison, her voice was calm and measured. Your father is looking for you. Her eyes flicked to Caleb and held there, long enough for the air to turn cold. I should go, Caleb whispered. Before I make things worse, he left without another word, fading into the shadows like he had always belonged to them. Back inside, Madison's mother did not speak. She simply walked beside her daughter, leading her to a private lounge down the hall, away from the guests. The walls were thick enough to mute the music. The fire crackled softly. Why do you keep going back to him? Her mother asked flatly. Madison blinked. What I saw you on the balcony, she said. I saw the way you looked at him. And do not insult me by pretending otherwise. Madison looked away. You would not understand. Her mother sat down slowly and crossed her legs. Would not I? I have been married to a man I do not love for over 20 years. I understand more than you think. There was a silence between them, thick and heavy. Then why stay? Madison finally asked. Her mother's eyes darkened. Because when you are in a family like this, love does not matter. Loyalty does. Appearances do. You make choices based on survival, not emotion. Madison stared at her. For the first time, she saw the woman not as a mother, not as an enemy, but as a reflection of what she might become. I do not want to live like that, Madison whispered. Her mother's expression did not change. Then do not. But understand this. If you choose Caleb, you will be choosing war with your father, with everything he has built, and he will destroy you for it, a knock interrupted them. Her father entered, calm but commanding. There you are, he said. Come, the mayor just arrived. I want you at my side. Madison stood without looking at him. She turned to her mother. Do you think love is ever worth destroying everything? For she asked quietly. Her mother did not answer. She looked at her daughter for a long, unreadable moment. Then Madison walked out, into the light, into the camera flashes, into the role that had been written for her since birth. But something inside her had shifted. She had seen the cracks in the walls. She had seen what love looked like in its purest and most painful form. And now, she knew what she was willing to lose for it. The days after the gala passed in a strange, suspended silence. Madison moved through her routines like a ghost in silk. Her body went where it was supposed to. Her smile appeared when it was expected, but her mind was somewhere else, locked in that moment on the balcony when Caleb had whispered, "I will wait." She had not seen him since that night. Not a message, not a call, just absence. A void where something alive had once burned. Her father was more attentive than usual. He brought her breakfast. He asked questions about her schedule. He even offered her a position in his company, claiming he wanted to train her for the future. But Madison knew better. He was securing his pieces on the board, ensuring no one moved without his approval. Her mother, on the other hand, said little. She watched from the corners of rooms, her eyes quiet but calculating, like she was waiting for something to happen. It did not take long. One morning, Madison returned from a meeting downtown. As she walked into the house, she noticed something strange. The security guards were whispering. The house staff avoided her eyes. Her father's assistant, a woman who had never once acknowledged her presence before, looked directly at her and then quickly turned away. She climbed the stairs to the second floor and walked toward her mother's study. The door was open. Inside, her mother stood at the window, her arms folded. On the desk was a folder. "What is going on?" Madison asked. Her mother turned slowly. "Sit down." Madison frowned but obeyed. Her mother opened the folder and pushed it toward her. Inside were photographs. Madison felt her breath stop. There she was, on the balcony with Caleb, her hand on his chest, his lips close to her ear. Another shot captured the exact moment she had looked at him like the world did not exist beyond his eyes. "These are surveillance photos," Madison whispered. Her mother nodded. "Your father had the estate monitored for security reasons. He saw them yesterday." Madison closed the folder. Her throat burned. "What did he say?" "He did not need to say anything," her mother replied. "He just gave me this and told me to handle it." Madison stood abruptly. "So what now? I am supposed to beg for forgiveness?" Her mother remained still. "I am not here to scold you. I am here to warn you. He is going to destroy." Caleb Madison's chest tightened. "What do you mean, destroy?" He already started. "Your father had his company audited. Caleb's investors are being investigated. One of his key patents was just contested in court. Your father will bury him in legal hell and financial ruin until the only thing Caleb has left is regret." Madison could barely breathe. "This is insane." "It is reality," her mother said softly. "Your father cannot afford weakness, and love is weakness in his eyes." That night, Madison drove. She did not care where. She just drove until the city lights faded behind her. Eventually, she found herself parked in front of Caleb's apartment. She climbed the stairs and knocked. He opened the door, and the moment their eyes met, all the noise in her head went quiet. "I should not be here," she said. "I hoped you would be," he replied. She stepped inside. The apartment was dark except for a single lamp by the couch. It smelled like coffee and rain. "Your father is coming for you," she said. "I figured he might," Caleb replied. "I got 3 letters from attorneys today. One of my accounts is frozen." Madison closed her eyes. "I am sorry. Do not be," he said. "He is just proving everything I ever feared about your world." She turned to him. "You should leave the city. Start over." "Before he ruins you," Caleb shook his head. "I will not run. Not from this. Not from you." "You do not understand," she said. "He will not stop. He will bleed you dry just to prove he can." "Then let him," Caleb said quietly. "Let him take everything. Because the only thing I ever wanted, the only thing I still want, is you." She stared at him. And for one fragile moment, She believed they could still have something real. But then her phone rang. It was her father. She let it ring. Then it rang again and again. Caleb watched her. "Do you need to answer that? No," she said, and turned off the phone. The silence that followed felt like a vow. They stood facing each other. No promises, no plans. Just the shared understanding that everything was about to fall apart. Later that night, as Madison left his apartment, she noticed a black car parked across the street. The windows were tinted. No headlights, just stillness. She knew immediately. He was watching her. The next morning, Caleb's office was raided by state investigators. His business accounts were seized. His name was splashed across headlines. Fraud allegations, patent theft, insider manipulation. None of it was true, but the damage was done. By the end of the week, he was suspended from his own company. Madison watched the news in silence. Her father entered the room and turned off the television. "This is the price of disloyalty," he said. "You destroyed him," she whispered. "I protected you," he replied. She looked at him. "Number, you caged me, and you think that is the same thing." He walked closer. "You still have a future. Do not throw it away on some reckless emotion I already did," she said. "The night I chose not to walk away from him." He stared at her for a long moment, then left the room. She was alone again, but this time the silence did not feel hollow. It felt like defiance. It felt like the first step towards something irreversible, something that could never be undone. I stared at the text on my phone, my hands trembling. It was from my father. Just 4 words. "We need to talk. Urgent." My heart sank. I knew exactly what it meant. He had found out. I had spent weeks trying to keep everything under wraps, making sure no one in the family found out that I was still seeing Jacob. After all the warnings, all the surveillance, the curfews, the lectures, and the emotional blackmail, I had still chosen to see him. And now I would pay the price. The room suddenly felt suffocating. I looked over at Jacob, who sat at the other end of the couch, reading a report on his laptop. He looked so peaceful, so unaware. For a second, I considered not telling him, pretending everything was fine. But I could not lie anymore. Not to him, not to myself. I swallowed hard. "Jacob," I said, breaking the silence. He looked up immediately, sensing the weight in my voice. "My dad wants to meet. He found out." Jacob stared at me for a moment. He closed his laptop slowly and leaned forward. "Then it is time." I nodded. The next day we met at the family estate. I was surprised when my father greeted Jacob calmly. There were no angry outbursts, no accusations, just a tight smile and a gesture toward the study. The 3 of us entered. My mother watched from the hallway, her face unreadable. My father sat behind his grand desk and folded his hands. "So," he said to Jacob, "I suppose you know who I am." Jacob nodded. "And you must know what you are putting at risk by involving my daughter in this." Jacob's expression did not falter. "Sir, I respect you and everything you have built. I never intended to deceive anyone. I care about your daughter deeply." My father leaned back, his fingers tapping on the polished wood. "And yet you failed to mention that you are the primary investor in our West Coast expansion. You used a different name, different companies. You sat across from me in meetings and never once brought up the fact that you were seeing my daughter." I was shocked. I turned to Jacob, my voice shaking. "Is this true?" He nodded slowly. "I wanted to be seen for who I am, not just a title or a balance sheet. I did not want our relationship to be tangled in power or business." My father's voice was cold. "You deliberately kept your identity hidden. That is not honesty. That is manipulation." I stood up. "Number. It is not like that. He was trying to protect us. From your judgment. From your control." My father turned to me. "You think I am the enemy here? I am trying to protect you. From love?" I snapped. "From a man who has done more for me than anyone else ever has?" Jacob stood up beside me. "I understand your concern, sir, but I will not walk away from her. Not now. Not ever." The tension in the room was thick. My father stared at us for a long time. Then finally he sighed. "If you two are serious, then I expect transparency. No more secrets, no more games. After we left, I felt torn. I should have been relieved, but I could not shake the feeling that Jacob had hidden too much from me. I trusted him with everything, and he had not trusted me enough to tell me the truth. Later that night, I asked him why. Why he had kept it all from me. Why he thought I would not understand. He looked at me, his eyes full of guilt. I did not want to risk losing you. I have been burned before, used for my money, my influence. I thought if I could just keep this part of me separate, you would love me for who I am, not for what I own. I reached out and touched his hand. I do love you, but you have to let me in. I want to know all of you. Not just the man I see at dinner or on late-night walks. I want to know your fears, your mistakes, your past. He nodded, and so he did. For the first time, Jacob told me everything. About the early days when he slept in his car while building his first startup. About how he lost his mother and raised his little sister. About the nights he cried himself to sleep, thinking he would never be enough for someone like me. And I cried too, because I had judged him. Even for a moment, I had doubted his love. Weeks passed. My father slowly warmed up to Jacob. My mother stayed quiet, but I noticed the way she watched us, as if remembering something from her own youth. Eventually, she pulled me aside. I used to be like you, she said. Brave, stubborn. I just hope you are sure, because this kind of love does not come twice. And I was sure. Jacob and I learned how to live in the space between two worlds. His world of quiet determination, and mine of family expectations. We fought, we cried, we held each other through it all. He proposed on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, in the same park where we had our first kiss, and I said yes. The wedding was small. My father still had his reservations, but he walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes. My mother smiled through them too. Jacob looked at me like I was the only person in the world, and in that moment, I knew. Love is not about power or money or legacy. It is about truth, about choosing someone again and again, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. And I would keep choosing him, every single day. The days that followed felt like walking on a tightrope. At home, my parents still had no idea about the real extent of my connection with Jacob. At least, they never said anything directly. They continued to act as if our relationship was a passing teenage dream, something that would fade when I eventually came to my senses. But the more time I spent with Jacob, the more I realized I was not living in some fleeting infatuation. This was real. Jacob, on the other hand, remained calm and confident. He always had a way of making everything seem like it was going to be okay, even when we were walking straight into the storm. And lately, I felt that storm was getting closer. One afternoon, Jacob invited me to visit a charity gala his company was co-hosting in Manhattan. It was an elegant event, with rows of crystal chandeliers and velvet tablecloths, attended by the most powerful people in New York business. It was the kind of place I had grown up around, the world of wealth and influence. But this time, I walked in not as someone's daughter but as Jacob's guest. That changed everything. When we arrived, people greeted Jacob with familiarity and respect. Some even addressed him as Mr. Carson. That was still strange to me. I had fallen for the version of him who wore worn-out jeans and fixed things with his bare hands. But seeing him in a tailored suit, surrounded by CEOs and investment bankers, made me realize I had never truly understood the full scope of who he was. As the night went on, I noticed a familiar face at the bar. My father. He had not mentioned attending this event, and I instantly knew he had not expected to see me here either. His eyes met mine across the room, and his expression froze. But before he could approach me, someone stepped up beside him. Jacob. Calm and composed as always, he greeted my father like a respected business partner. What happened next was something I never could have imagined. The two of them shook hands, firmly. No animosity, no awkwardness. In fact, my father almost looked proud. Later, I found out the truth. Jacob had been working with my family's corporation for over a year, quietly, behind the scenes. His company had helped pull my father's business out of a serious financial crisis 6 months ago. It was Jacob's innovation and strategy that prevented a major collapse. My father never told me. Maybe he was ashamed that the man he tried to keep away from me was the same one who saved his legacy. When I confronted my father about it, he simply said, "I did what I thought was best. At the time, I did not think he was good enough for you. I did not think he was stable or serious. But I was wrong." That night, Jacob walked me home. We did not talk much on the way. There was too much to process. When we finally reached my doorstep, I turned to him. "Why did you never tell me you were helping my father?" I asked. "Because I wanted you to love me for me, not for what I could do," he replied. "I never wanted business to be part of what we had." That answer stayed with me. It was so simple, so honest. In the days that followed, I began to see everything more clearly. My parents, for all their flaws, had come from a place of protection. But their idea of protection had blinded them to the truth, and I had been just as guilty. I had judged Jacob for not telling me about his wealth and influence, but in reality he had just wanted to be seen as the man he was, not the businessman. One weekend, we went hiking in the Adirondacks, a plan Jacob had made weeks ago. It was quiet and peaceful, far from the noise of Manhattan and family politics. As we reached the top of a steep trail, I paused to catch my breath. Jacob took my hand, looked at me with that familiar calm, and said, "I know things have not been easy, but I meant every word I said when I told you I love you. That has never changed." I believed him, more than I had ever believed anything in my life. That night, we camped under the stars. No fancy hotels, no gala dresses, just two people who had finally stripped away all the secrets. As we lay there in the silence of the woods, I whispered, "I love you too. Not because of who you are or what you have done, but because of how you make me feel when you look at me like I am the only thing that matters." And in that moment, I knew we had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. We were no longer fighting to be together. We simply were. When we returned to the city after our weekend in the Adirondacks, everything felt different. Something had shifted, not just between me and Jacob, but in the world around us. For the first time, there were no secrets left between us. No roles to play, no masks. It was just love, quiet, strong, unshakable. But peace never lasts long in a world built on expectations. One evening, as I walked into my apartment, I found my mother waiting. She sat in silence, her posture stiff, her eyes unreadable. She had not said much about Jacob in months, choosing instead to pretend like he did not exist. But tonight, I knew something was coming. She held a thin folder in her hand. Without a word, she placed it on the table in front of me. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were photos, dozens of them, all of Jacob. Some were from years ago. Him leaving a courthouse, him standing outside a juvenile center, him in handcuffs. My heart stopped. My mother finally spoke. His record was sealed. But people talk. And when people talk, I listen. I had to make sure you knew who he was before you decide to tie yourself to him forever. I stared at the photos, trying to make sense of them. This could not be true. Jacob had never mentioned anything like this. A sealed juvenile record. A past hidden away in shadows. I felt betrayed. Not because of what he might have done, but because he never told me. I left the apartment without another word. That night, I drove to his place. When he opened the door and saw my face, he knew immediately something was wrong. I held out the folder. "Tell me this is not real," I whispered. He did not even look at the photos. He just nodded slowly. "It is real," he said. And then he told me everything. When he was 16, he had been arrested for breaking and entering. It was not as simple as stealing. He had been homeless after running away from a foster home where he had been abused. He broke into an old house just to have a place to sleep. He did not take anything. But the law did not care. They arrested him and sent him to a juvenile detention center. That was where he met someone who changed his life. A teacher named Mr. Daniels, who saw something in him, who helped him earn his GED, who got him his first internship when he got out. Jacob had built everything from there. Every step, every dollar, every success. "I wanted to tell you," he said quietly, 1,000 times. "But I was afraid you would see me differently. I was afraid it would undo everything we built." I felt like the floor had disappeared under me. I loved him. I still loved him. But now I was staring into a part of his life I never imagined existed. I stayed silent for a long time. Finally, I said, "You should have told me. You should have trusted me with this. Because right now, it is not your past that scares me. It is the fact that you thought I could not handle it." He looked away, his jaw tight. I left his place in silence. The next few days were a blur. I barely slept. I ignored Jacob's calls. I could not talk to my parents either. Not after what my mother had done. I needed space. I needed to figure out if I could live with this part of his past, if I could forgive him for keeping it from me. Then something unexpected happened. One morning, I woke up to a news alert on my phone. Jacob's name. His company. A scandal. One of his former business partners had been arrested for fraud, and Jacob was being dragged into the headlines simply by association. It was ugly. Old photos surfaced. Rumors spread. His sealed record was leaked to the press. Overnight, he became a target. I knew then that I could not stay silent any longer. I went to his apartment. He looked like he had not slept in days. His eyes were sunken, his voice hoarse. "I am sorry," he said before I could even speak. "I should have told you everything. I should have trusted you. I just did not want you to see me as broken." "You are not broken," I said. "But love only works if it is built on truth. All of it. The light and the dark. I want all of you. But I need all of you to show up." He nodded. We held each other for a long time. And in that moment, I knew I would rather walk through fire with him than live in comfort with someone who never truly saw me. The world might judge him. The press might tear him apart. My family might never fully understand. But love is not about perfection. It is about standing beside someone when they are at their lowest. And that is exactly what I chose to do. The press did not stop. The moment Jacob's sealed record was leaked, they tore into him like wolves. Every outlet wanted a piece of the story. The reformed businessman with a dark past. The tech genius who had once been behind bars. It did not matter that he had built everything from nothing. It did not matter that he had never hidden his past from the law, only from me. The narrative had already been written for him. He became the headline. And I became the girl who stayed. I did not regret it, not even for a second. But staying with him came at a price. My family stopped speaking to me. My mother said I was throwing away my future. My father barely looked at me the last time we crossed paths. The house I grew up in, once filled with cold expectations and glittering perfection, now felt like a museum of someone else's life. I stopped going there altogether. I moved into Jacob's apartment that week, not because I wanted to prove a point, but because I could not bear to live another day pretending I was someone else. He was quiet most days. He worked late into the night, trying to save what was left of his company. Investors were pulling out, clients were dropping deals. Even those who had once praised his grit now acted as if they had never known him. But I saw him. I saw the man who refused to collapse under the weight of a world that wanted him to fail. I saw the boy who had slept on cold floors, who had rebuilt his life from ashes, who had carried shame in silence for too long. One night, I came home to find him sitting alone on the rooftop of our building. The skyline stretched out in front of him, endless and uncaring. He did not turn when I sat beside him. "I think I lost everything," he said. "Number. You did not lose me," I whispered. He finally looked at me. His eyes were tired, but still burning. "That means more than you know." I placed my hand on his. "We will rebuild, Jacob. Not for them, not for the world, but for us. For the life we deserve." He nodded slowly, but I could see the fear behind his resolve. Over the next few weeks we made a plan. A new beginning. One brick at a time. He resigned from his own company. It was the hardest decision he had ever made, but he knew it was necessary. The board had turned on him. They used the scandal to push him out, to protect the brand. He walked away with nothing but his name. But his name was enough. Jacob started consulting for smaller startups. Founders who did not care about his past but respected his mind. He worked long hours. I returned to my art, something I had abandoned years ago to meet the expectations of a future I no longer wanted. We scraped by. We lived simply. We laughed more. Love, it turned out, did not need chandeliers or penthouses. It just needed honesty and time. But the city remembered. And not always kindly. One evening, we went to a gala hosted by an old friend of mine, someone who had not yet decided to exile me. It was one of the first times we had stepped into public together since the scandal. The moment we walked in, I felt the shift. Eyes turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. Look, that is him. That is the girl. What is she doing here with someone like him? I gripped Jacob's hand tighter. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. We stood by the wall, avoiding attention. But attention found us anyway. A woman I had once called a friend approached us. Her dress shimmered, her smile was sharp. "It is brave of you to show up," she said, sipping champagne. "Not everyone would." I held my head high. "We have nothing to hide." She looked at Jacob. "Well, not anymore, I suppose." Before I could respond, Jacob gently pulled me back. "Let it go," he whispered. "They are not worth it." But he was wrong. Because people like her were the reason so many never got second chances. I stepped forward. "You know, I used to care what people like you thought. I really did. But then I realized something. Your world, your rules, they are not real. They are just a game. A game designed to keep people like him out. And I am done playing." The woman blinked, stunned. Jacob looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. We left the gala early, but I did not feel defeated. I felt free. That night, as we lay in bed, Jacob turned to me. "You were incredible tonight." "I just told the truth," I replied. "Still, thank you for fighting for me." "I was not fighting for you," I said softly. "I was fighting for us." He kissed my forehead, and for the first time in weeks, he slept without nightmares. The world had tried to write our story for us, but we were taking the pen back. The next few months passed in silence from the world, but not from within us. Jacob and I found a rhythm that no longer relied on anyone else's approval. We woke early. He worked. I painted. We made dinner together. We read late into the night. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic scenes, just two people holding on to each other, as if the rest of the world no longer existed. But peace, in our lives, never lasted long. One morning, while Jacob was in the shower, his phone buzzed. A single message, displayed clearly on the screen. "You cannot run from it forever. They are reopening the case." I stared at the message until the water stopped. My hands were cold. I said nothing when he walked out, towel around his waist, face calm and unaware. "Jacob." I held up the phone. "What is this?" He froze. I waited. He looked at the floor, then back at me. I thought it was over. I thought they had dropped it for good. "What are they reopening?" I asked, already afraid of the answer. "There was another person involved in the incident," he said slowly. "Someone I protected. Someone who never came forward. The DA thinks I took the fall for both of us. If they prove it, they might charge me again. Or worse, charge her." "Her?" My voice cracked. "Her name is Tessa. She was my girlfriend at the time. She was with me that night. It was her idea. She was angry, reckless. I was too. We both did it. But when the police came, she ran, and I stayed. I could not breathe." "So you lied to protect her?" "I never told anyone. Not even my lawyer. I thought I was doing the right thing. I loved her. I thought she would come back. She never did. And now? Now they found her. Someone tipped them off." I stepped away, needing space between us. Not because I hated him, but because I had never felt so uncertain about what love required. "I do not know what they will do," he said, "but if I am called back in, I might have to testify. About everything. Do you still love her?" He shook his head immediately. "Number. That part of my life is over. You are the only person I want. But that does not erase what I did back then, or what I didn't do." I turned to the window. The city was waking up below us, so unaware of the quiet collapse happening in this small apartment. Do you regret taking the fall for her? I asked. He hesitated. Yes, and no. I regret losing years of my life, but I do not regret being the kind of person who would take the blame. That person deserved a second chance. I hoped she would become better. I needed to believe in that, just like you believe in me now. The word stuck with me, because I did believe in him. I always had, even now. But faith, I realized, was not about perfection. It was about choosing to stand beside someone even when the ground beneath you shifted. In the following weeks, the past returned in full force. Subpoenas, news stories, reporters circling again. This time, not just Jacob, but Tessa too. Her face was splashed across the screens. She had a family now. Children. A husband who had not known anything about her past. The world feasted on the drama. Jacob was called to testify in court. I went with him, sat behind him every day, watched as he recounted the night that changed his life, watched the pain in his eyes as he spoke about betrayal, fear, and the silence that followed. Tessa sat across the courtroom, pale, hollow, her husband beside her. She did not cry, but she looked at Jacob with something close to gratitude, maybe even guilt. When it was over, Jacob walked out of the courtroom and collapsed into my arms. "It is done," he whispered. They did not press new charges. Statute of limitations. Tessa was not arrested either. Her life would never be the same, but she would not go to prison. We rode the subway home in silence. That night, Jacob stood on the balcony and stared out into the dark. "She thanked me," he said suddenly. "After the trial, she told me she had been living with it for years, that she thought about turning herself in but never had the courage." "And you gave her that courage?" I asked. "Maybe." He turned to me. "Do you think I did the right thing?" I walked up to him, placed my hand over his heart. "You did what you thought was right. And that is what makes you the man I love." He looked at me, broken and whole at the same time. "I do not deserve you, maybe not." I smiled gently. "But you have me anyway." We stood there for a long time, the two of us, on the edge of a world that had tried to destroy us. But we were still standing, and that had to mean something. The calm after the storm was deceptive. At first, it felt like we could finally breathe. The trial was over. Tessa had returned to her quiet suburban life. The reporters stopped calling. The whispers faded. But inside our apartment, something had shifted. Jacob no longer slept through the night. I would wake to find him sitting on the floor by the bed, staring at nothing. He said nothing was wrong. He smiled like he used to. But I knew the smile was just a habit now, like brushing your teeth or locking the door. It did not mean peace. One night, I came home from work and found him gone. No note, no message. Just his jacket missing from the hook and his boots tracked with mud across the kitchen floor. I called him. No answer. Panic rose in my throat like fire. I grabbed my car keys and drove without knowing where to go. Through the streets of New York, past the bar where we first met, past the courthouse, past the broken memories. Then I remembered. The bridge, the one he used to go to when he was younger. He had told me about it once, in a quiet moment after we had made love, when his guard was down. He said he used to sit there when the world became too loud, when he was 17 and broke and scared and alone. I drove there with shaking hands. And he was there, standing on the edge, not dangerously close to falling, but far enough that my heart clenched in my chest. "Jacob," I called softly. He turned, and for the first time in months, his expression was honest, raw, vulnerable, haunted. I walked up to him slowly. "You scared me," I said. He looked back at the river. The water was dark and cold. "I do not know who I am anymore," he said. "I used to think I was the guy who made a mistake and paid the price. But now I am not sure if I was a fool, or just a coward who wanted to be a hero." "You are not a coward." "A hero, then?" He laughed bitterly. "I am 30, with no degree, no savings, and a reputation built on silence. Who would want that man?" "I do," I said. He looked at me. "Do you know how often I think about walking away? Not because I want to leave you, but because I feel like you would be better without me. I see your future, and I am not in it. Not really. I am just a pause between chapters. I stepped closer. You are not a pause. You are the reason I stopped running. He looked down. Tears pooled at the corners of his eyes, but he blinked them away. I am tired of being a story people whisper about. I want to be boring. I want to take out the trash and argue about what to watch on Netflix and complain about burnt toast. I want peace. Then let us build it, I said. Piece by piece. It will not be perfect, but it will be ours. He was silent for a long time. Then he reached for my hand. I am afraid I will mess it up. So am I said. Every day. But love is not about guarantees. It is about showing up even when it is hard. He gripped my hand tightly. Let's go home, I whispered. We walked back to the car together. The next morning, Jacob made breakfast. Eggs and toast. The toast was burned. We laughed. Later that day, he applied for a job at a construction company nearby. Nothing glamorous, but honest work. He came home with dirt on his hands, and a tired smile that for once was real. Nights were still hard. Sometimes he would wake up sweating, heart racing. I would hold him until he fell asleep again. But the space between the nightmares grew longer, and in their place came dreams. We started talking about the future again. A tiny house outside the city. A dog. Maybe a garden. One day, while I was painting, Jacob came up behind me and slipped something into my pocket. A small, folded piece of paper. I opened it. It was a drawing, a shaky sketch of a ring, and underneath it, a question. Not now, not yet, but someday. If I ask, will you say yes? I turned to him. He looked nervous, but there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. Yes, I said. 1,000 times yes. He kissed me slow and steady, like he was anchoring himself to this moment. We were still healing, still haunted, but we were not broken. We were building something stronger, together. The seasons began to change, and with them, so did we. Autumn came to New York with golden leaves and wind that tasted like memory. Jacob and I were slowly finding rhythm again. There were mornings when he would hum to himself while making coffee, and nights when he would read quietly beside me on the couch. It was not a perfect life. It was not even the life we had once dreamed of. But it was real, and it was ours. Still, there were moments when the shadows returned. One evening, as we sat in the small park near our apartment, watching children chase each other through fallen leaves, Jacob grew quiet. "Do you ever think about her?" he asked suddenly. He did not have to say her name. I knew. Tessa. I nodded. Sometimes. What do you think about? I was quiet for a long time. I think about how lost she must have been. How lonely. How angry. Jacob nodded, looking out across the park. I used to dream about her. After the trial, I would wake up and see her standing in the doorway, just watching. She never said anything, just looked, like she was waiting for something. Do you still dream about her? No, he said. Not lately. But sometimes I think she is still watching me, waiting for me to fail. You are not failing, I said. He did not respond. Later that night, he took a long shower. I sat alone on the couch, staring at the television but not really watching. My mind wandered back to that summer, the trial, the betrayal, the fear, and beneath it all, the question I had buried deep. Why did she do it? Why did Tessa choose to destroy what we had? The next morning, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, just our names, printed in neat handwriting across the front. Jacob opened it. Inside was a letter. It was from Tessa. He handed it to me without a word and sat down, burying his face in his hands as I read. Dear Jacob, by the time you read this, I will have disappeared for good. No more phone calls, no more letters, no more courtrooms. I owe you that. I used to think I was the victim, that I was protecting you, but now I realize I was trying to keep you for myself, not out of love, but out of fear. You were the one bright thing in a dark time in my life. And when I felt you slipping away, I panicked. I told myself lies, and then believed them. I made you into a villain because it was easier than admitting I had become one. I am not asking for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I want you to know I see you now. And I hope someday you can see yourself again too. Tessa, I folded the letter and sat in silence. Jacob looked up at me. His eyes were red. That was the first time she ever said the truth, he whispered. We sat there for a long time, the letter between us like a fragile ghost. Eventually we put it away. Life continued. Jacob got the job at the construction site. He came home each evening with dirt under his nails and stories about the men he worked with. Some of them had been to prison too. They talked about second chances and shared cigarettes on the lunch break. One of them, a man named Louis, became a friend. He had a scar across his chin and a laugh that filled the room. Luis invited us over one Saturday for dinner. His wife, Maria, cooked stew and told us about the garden she kept behind their apartment. It was the first time in years that Jacob truly laughed. Later that night, as we walked home under the streetlights, he took my hand. I feel like I am coming back to life, he said. You are, I said. He looked up at the stars. I used to think I would never have a future, that I was stuck in the worst thing I ever did. But now, I can imagine things. A home, a family, maybe even peace. You already have those things, I said. You just have to let yourself believe it. He smiled. That night, we made love slowly. Not out of desperation or guilt or fear, but because we wanted to feel each other. To remind ourselves that we were still here, still whole. Afterward, Jacob held me close. Do you think people like me ever really move on? Yes, I said. Not all at once, but little by little, step by step. He was quiet for a moment. I think I am ready to take the next step. What do you mean? He reached into the drawer beside the bed and pulled out a small black box. Inside was a ring. Simple. Silver. No diamonds. No flash. Just a circle. A promise. I know I messed everything up, he said. And I know we still have a long road ahead. But I love you. And I want to walk that road with you. I stared at the ring. My heart thudded in my chest. Yes, I whispered. Yes. He slipped it onto my finger. We lay there in silence, the weight of everything we had been through pressing down on us. But for the first time, it did not crush us. It made us stronger. The shadows still lingered. The past was still real. But so was the future. And it was ours to build. Winter came early that year. Snow fell in thick silence over Brooklyn, blanketing everything in soft white. The city, usually so loud and alive, now seemed hushed, as if holding its breath. Jacob and I were planning the wedding. Nothing big, nothing flashy. Just something quiet, maybe in the spring. A few close friends, a simple dress, something real, something earned. I found myself smiling more, sleeping better, breathing deeper. But the past never stays buried for long. One evening I got a call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something inside me, some old instinct, made me press accept. A woman's voice, calm, measured. Too calm. Is this Emily Harris? Yes. Who is this? This is Detective Laura Bennett. I'm calling from Westchester County PD. I need to ask you a few questions about Tessa Morgan. My heart stopped. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. What about her? There's been an incident. I turned away from Jacob, who was sitting in the living room laughing at something on the television. What kind of incident? She's missing, Miss Harris. Disappeared from her residence 3 days ago. Her car was found abandoned by the river. No signs of struggle. No note. Her family says she'd been distant lately. Unstable. I tried to speak but couldn't. Miss Harris? Are you still there? Yes. I haven't seen her in over a year. She sent a letter a few months ago. That's all. Would you be willing to come down to the station to discuss that letter? Why? Because right now, you're one of the last people known to have had contact with her. I felt the blood drain from my face. I hung up without saying goodbye. For a long time, I just stood there. Jacob eventually noticed. You okay? I nodded too quickly. Yeah, just tired. He didn't press. But that night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Tessa's voice, seeing her face, imagining her alone, driving toward that river, the wind in her hair and her demons in the back seat. What if she really was gone? What if her ghost would haunt us forever? The next morning I went to the station. Detective Bennett was younger than I expected. Sharp eyes, no-nonsense tone. She laid the letter on the table between us. Is this her handwriting? Yes. She said she was leaving. That she wouldn't contact us again. Do you believe she meant that? I don't know. The detective studied me. You were close once, weren't you? We were. A long time ago. And then things went bad. Yes. Because of Jacob. Because of all of us. She leaned back. Look, off the record I've seen women like her before. Intelligent. Manipulative. Self-destructive. Sometimes they vanish because they want to. Other times, they want someone to come looking. I didn't respond. After a moment, the detective leaned in again. If she contacts you any email, text, anything, I need you to call me immediately. I agreed. But inside, I was already certain. Tessa wasn't coming back. When I told Jacob, he froze. Missing? What do you mean missing? I explained. The car, the river, the cold. He sat down slowly. You think she's really gone? I don't know. But it feels like something's ending. He looked at me with something I hadn't seen in his eyes for months. Guilt. If she's dead, it's my fault. Number, don't do that. But it is. I should have stopped her years ago. I should have gotten her help. I should have walked away sooner. She made her own choices, Jacob. And so did I. We stared at each other. And suddenly, it felt like we were standing on a cliff again. Wind rushing. Stones crumbling beneath our feet. This time I stepped forward first. Let's go away, I said. What? Just for a few days. Somewhere quiet. Just us. We need space to breathe. He nodded. 3 days later, we rented a cabin upstate. No phones. No news. Just trees and frost and silence. We sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets, drinking cocoa and telling each other stories about our childhoods. He told me about the first time he got in trouble at school. I told him about my mother's apple pie and how it never tasted the same after she left. One night, I asked him something I had always been afraid to say aloud. Did you ever love her? He looked into the fire. I don't know. I think I confused attention with love. She made me feel wanted, needed, powerful. But it was a lie, and so was I. I took his hand. Do you love me? He turned to me. Yes. And I'm terrified of losing you. You already lost me once. I know. I'll never let it happen again. We made love that night as the snow piled high outside. Slow, honest, no walls, no shadows. In the morning the world looked new, white, clean, ready. But when we returned to the city, reality was waiting. An envelope in the mailbox. No return address. Just a single photo inside. Jacob, asleep, in our bed, taken from the outside window. I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding. Then I turned it over. There was writing on the back. Not over. I dropped the photo. The past had found us again. Tessa was still out there. And this time, she wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was promising revenge. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart thudded against my ribcage like it was trying to escape. I had just left my parents' estate after the most humiliating dinner of my life. In front of every board member of the company, my father stood and announced my engagement. But not to Jake. To Eric Montclair, son of one of the oldest oil dynasties in Texas. The room had applauded. I had smiled. My mother had winked at me like she had just gifted me a diamond the size of my head. And Jake was sitting at the other end of the table, looking like someone had just stabbed him through the chest with a silver fork. I never knew pain could feel this physical. Like my whole body was sinking through the floor. I drove without thinking. No music, no lights, just the cold voice of my father's betrayal echoing in my mind. You deserve better than some contractor boy, he had said when I tried to protest. Better than some man who patched roofs in dusty boots. But Jake was never just that. I found myself at his apartment. My knock was frantic, uncoordinated. When he opened the door, his eyes were red. Not from anger, from heartbreak. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. He looked at me like I was something unreachable now, like I had joined the world he had fought so hard to stay out of. "Did you know he was going to do that?" he asked. I shook my head. "Number, I swear to you." But the trust we had was now hanging by a thread. Jake stepped aside, letting me in. His apartment smelled like sawdust and coffee. It was warm, honest. Nothing like the cold marble halls of my family's estate. He sat down on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "I never wanted to play games," he said quietly. "I wanted you, just you." I sat beside him, hands trembling. I told him I didn't care about the money, about the deals, that I was going to call off the engagement, that I was done being my parents' pawn. "You think they'll let you go that easily?" he asked. "I don't care what they'll do. I care what I do. And I'm staying. With you." The silence that followed was heavy. But it was not cold. It was filled with years of feelings we had tried to hide, bend, and bury. He finally turned to me. There was pain in his eyes. But there was also love. "You sure?" he asked. I nodded. "I've never been more sure." He pulled me into his arms, holding me like he was scared I would disappear. And maybe I was scared too. But I had chosen. That night we stayed up talking until the sun began to rise. We planned nothing. We promised nothing except this, that whatever storm came, we would face it together. In the distance, I knew my father was already plotting his next move. But I no longer belonged to his world. I had stepped out of the golden cage, and I was ready to fly, even if it meant into the unknown, as long as Jake was beside me. The war was far from over, but for the first time, we were on the same side, and that was all we needed. The news broke the next morning like a thunderclap across every screen, headline, and boardroom. Miriam Caldwell, heiress to Caldwell Holdings, had called off her engagement to Eric Montclair. The Montclairs were livid. My parents were beyond furious. My phone rang until I had to silence it and drop it into a drawer. I stayed in Jake's apartment, curled up in his bed while he made coffee in the kitchen, his back tense but steady. We both knew the storm had arrived. By noon, my mother was standing at Jake's front door. Not a phone call, not an assistant. She came herself. She wore her best pearls like armor and a deep green coat that whispered money and control. Jake opened the door, and she didn't wait for an invitation. She walked in like she owned the place. I stepped into the living room, wearing one of Jake's flannel shirts over my dress from the night before. My hair was still a mess. I didn't care. Her eyes scanned the apartment. The scuffed hardwood, the mismatched furniture, the smell of fresh coffee and sawdust. "This is where you've been hiding," she said, almost to herself. I crossed my arms. "I'm not hiding. I'm living." She turned her gaze to Jake. "You think you've won," she said coldly, "but you have no idea what my husband is capable of." Jake didn't flinch. He simply nodded. "I know exactly what he's capable of, and I'm not afraid." She looked at me again. "Miriam, come home. We can fix this. Eric will forgive the embarrassment. The press will calm down. Your father will. I cut her off. "I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not marrying a man I don't love." Her jaw tightened. "He'll ruin him, you know." "Jake. He'll blacklist him. No contracts, no permits, no jobs. He'll bury him with a smile." Jake stepped forward. "Let him try. I've built everything with my own hands. I'll build it all again if I have to." My mother stared at us both, and for the first time I saw something almost human flicker in her eyes. A flicker of fear, of memory. "You don't know what it's like to watch someone you love get crushed by the system," she whispered. Maybe that was her warning. Or maybe it was her own ghost speaking. Then she left. Just like that. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake put a hand on my back. "You okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't. Not really. I was terrified. The next few days were brutal. My father froze my accounts. My credit cards stopped working. My phone plan was cut. I had no access to anything that used to be mine. Jake took it all in stride. He added me to his bank account, bought me a prepaid phone, cooked dinner with what little we had. We laughed, we cried, we talked deep into the night, and I realized something. This, this was what real life felt like. It was raw, it was uncertain, it was terrifying, but it was real. One evening, we sat on the floor, sharing takeout Chinese food from the cheap place across the street. Jake looked at me and said, "I want to buy land, build our own place, not just a house, a life, something they can't touch." I smiled. "Let's do it." But even as I smiled, I knew my father wasn't finished. And I was right. 2 days later, Jake got a call. The biggest contract he had been working toward, a massive housing development in Austin, was pulled. No explanation. Just gone. Then another. Then another. Within a week, half his projects were gone. The silence from clients was louder than any threat. My father didn't need to say a word. He was cutting off Jake's oxygen. And Jake, he didn't break. But I saw it in his eyes. The exhaustion, the quiet hurt. One night, he came home later than usual. His shirt was stained. His hands were calloused and red. "I got a job on a crew downtown," he said. "It's not much, but it'll cover rent." My throat tightened. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He shook his head. "Don't ever apologize for choosing me." I held him that night, tighter than ever, because the world was trying to rip us apart, and we were holding on with everything we had. Even if we had nothing left to hold but each other, that was still enough. For now. But deep down, I knew my father was not going to stop. He wanted me to come home, and if he couldn't bring me back with comfort, he would try to break me with pain, and I had no idea what he was planning next. But whatever it was, I had to be ready, not just to fight, but to survive, with Jake, or not at all. I used to believe that love could conquer all obstacles until I saw my mother crying in the kitchen because of the whispers from the high society. I stood frozen behind the door, clutching my phone, still hearing the conversation from earlier that afternoon between my mother and an old friend. They called me the daughter who was destroying the family's reputation just because I loved Liam, a man who came from a completely different world. In that moment, my heart ached, not for myself, but for the pain I caused my mother. Yet I still could not let Liam go, even as everything around me started to fall apart. In the days that followed, I turned into someone else. I went to work, went to school, came home on time, and barely said a word. My mother watched me with worried eyes, but I could not bring myself to tell her I was still seeing Liam, only now in secret. We met in a small cafe on the outskirts of town, where no one recognized me as Claire Montgomery, daughter of the most powerful real estate tycoon in the state. Liam was always there before me, waiting with gentle eyes and a smile that made me want to cry. He never asked if I was tired, never pressured me to choose. He just held my hand in silence. And in that silence, I felt more loved than ever before. One afternoon, my father called me into his study, the room I was never allowed to enter before. He sat behind his desk, flipping through files, then pushed a thick folder toward me. "Read this," he said. "You'll want to know." Inside were contracts between the Montgomery Group and Liam's company. They had been working together for over a year. Liam was the one who saved our biggest construction project from financial ruin. I was stunned, overwhelmed with the feeling of betrayal. So Liam had known everything from the start. All those conversations, all those nights he listened to me talk about my family, was it all part of some calculated move? I ran out of the house, not even knowing where I was going. When I finally stopped, I found myself in front of Liam's apartment. He opened the door, panic in his eyes when he saw me. "Claire, what's wrong?" I looked at him, my eyes filled with tears. "You knew who I was from the beginning, didn't you? You only got close to me because of the contract with my father." He froze, then shook his head. "I knew you were Claire Montgomery, yes, but I didn't get close to you because of work. I actually turned down the deal several times, until your father came to me. I told him clearly that if there was any personal involvement between us, I would withdraw from the project. But he didn't stop me. I think he wanted to see if you really loved me." I sank down to the floor, my heart racing. Everything I thought was betrayal turned out to be a test. And the one who set that test was my father. I broke down crying, not from pain, but from relief. Liam sat beside me and wrapped his arms around me. "I love you, Claire. Not because of who your family is, but because of who you are." I nodded. For the first time in months, I felt peace. The next week, my parents invited Liam to dinner. My mother hadn't fully accepted him, but she began to ask questions, to notice how he served me food, how he listened patiently. My father remained quiet, but I saw the approval in his eyes. I knew this journey wouldn't be easy, but true love always finds a way.